In the dim, pulsating light of the KTV room, the air thick with cigarette smoke and cheap perfume, everyone was chanting, fueled by alcohol and playful malice. "Julian, take her home tonight. Go on." My cheeks burned, and my fingers nervously pleated the hem of my short skirt. I risked a glance up at Julian, who was swirling the amber liquid in his glass. My gaze snagged on the sharp line of his jaw, the way his throat moved as he swallowed, and I instinctively moistened my lips, trying to ignore the lingering phantom sensation of his kiss from earlier. Even in the KTV's deliberately murky lighting, designed to obscure flaws and encourage recklessness, his features were strikingly vivid. He possessed a kind of dangerous beauty, every line sharp, every color intense. Julian took another sip of his drink, his eyes landing on me with an expression that was halfway between amusement and a challenge. "Coming with me later?" he asked, his voice a low murmur that still cut through the surrounding noise. Every rational part of me screamed to refuse, to maintain some semblance of dignity. But his smile, that slightly crooked, knowing smile, felt like a spell cast directly on me. Acutely aware of the mixture of lewd encouragement, envy and disdainful glances darting my way from the others slumped on the worn velvet couches, I gave a barely perceptible nod. This was the goal, wasn't it? Getting close to him. It was the entire reason I'd navigated the tedious bureaucracy and social maneuvering required to get into the student council office where he often held court. Julian's eyebrows lifted slightly, and the corner of his mouth quirked upwards in satisfaction. He reached out, his arm sliding smoothly around my waist, pulling me closer to his side. He fielded the relentless rounds of drinks being pushed towards him with effortless grace, never refusing, and I, caught in his orbit, found myself matching him drink for drink, the fiery liquid warming me from the inside out. By the time the party finally wound down, Julian was practically draped over me as we stumbled out into the cool night air. He was surprisingly heavy for someone so lean, his weight pressing down uncomfortably. I shifted my shoulders slightly. "Are you drunk?" A soft chuckle escaped him, vibrating against my ear as he leaned in close, his warm breath sending shivers down my spine. "Don't worry," he whispered, his voice husky. "I still have plenty of energy." My face flamed. Energy for what? The implication hung heavy and intoxicating in the air. We managed to hail a taxi. I bundled Julian into the back seat and had just slammed the door shut when he slid towards me, resting his head heavily in my lap. His long eyelashes swept down against his cheekbones, giving him an air of quiet detachment, almost coldness. But his hand contradicted the image, snaking around my waist, fingers tracing lazy patterns on the bare skin of my lower back. My breath hitched. I reached down, pressing my hand firmly against his wrist. "Don't," I whispered, my voice barely audible, conscious of the driver. In the front seat, my protest came out small and breathy, almost like a kitten's mew. I cringed inwardly at how weak, how pleading it sounded. Julian made a soft clicking sound with his tongue. "Speak properly," he murmured, his eyes still closed, though a faint smirk played on his lips. "Why the kitten act?" Before I could even think of a retort, he shifted, covering most of his face with his forearm, feigning sleep or disinterest. Julian didn't live in the dorms on weekends. The taxi pulled up outside a sleek, modern apartment building, and he led me upstairs with the practiced ease of someone who did this often. His fingers laced through mine. A familiar pang of bitterness tightened my chest. This off-campus apartment, probably convenient for bringing girls back, I thought sourly. The moment the apartment door clicked shut behind us, he had me pressed against it, his mouth finding mine in a kiss that was far from gentle. Was demanding, hot, consuming. As his lips moved against mine, a traitorous thought surfaced. Could I ever truly hold on to someone like Julian? But maybe just having him, even for a little while, was enough. I shouldn't be greedy. He pulled back slightly, his hand tilting my chin up, his dark eyes searching mine. "What are you thinking about?" I shook my head quickly, forcing a smile, trying to project an air of carefree enjoyment I didn't feel. "Nothing." His gaze intensified, darkened. He reached up, his palm covering my eyes, plunging me into sudden darkness. He pressed something small and foil-wrapped into my hand. "Don't look at me like that," he commanded softly. I don't know how. My face must have been crimson, hot enough to scald. His laughter echoed in the small hallway, low and dangerously seductive. "I'll teach you." And he did, his hands guiding mine, his fingers digging possessively into my hips. Later, drifting in the hazy space between wakefulness and sleep, a single thought kept circling. How many people had he been with to become so incredibly skilled, so effortlessly commanding? Morning light filtered through the blinds, pressing insistently against my eyelids. A heavy weight on my chest made breathing difficult. I blinked awake groggily, finding Julian's long, muscular arms slung possessively across me. His skin was porcelain pale, almost luminous against mine, the contrast startling yet strangely harmonious, as if they were always meant to be intertwined. Annoyed at the direction of my thoughts, I carefully pushed his arm away and sat up, swinging my legs over the side of the bed. Julian stirred, a slight frown creasing his brow. He reached out blindly, his hand brushing my back as he blinked his eyes open. "Stay," he mumbled, his voice thick with sleep, a lazy smile touching his lips as he tried to pull me back down. "It's still early." I evaded his grasp, my nails accidentally scraping his skin. "No, I need to get back to the dorm." A flicker of irritation crossed his face. Clearly not a morning person. He pushed himself up, leaning back against the headboard for a moment, letting the sleepiness dissipate. When he spoke again, his tone was noticeably cooler, the earlier warmth gone. "Fine. I'll drive you." Silently, we gathered our clothes scattered across the floor. I fought back the acidic sting of disappointment rising in my throat, reminding myself sternly, "You're not his girlfriend. What more do you expect?" For a casual hookup, his current detached politeness was probably more than generous. The drive back to campus was silent, the air thick with unspoken thoughts. Only when we pulled up in front of my dormitory did Julian seem to fully wake up, turning to me with a curt question. "Want to grab breakfast?" A strange intuition, a gut feeling, warned me that if I refused now, he probably wouldn't contact me again. That unspoken warning made me nod despite my bruised pride. "Okay." Julian looked slightly surprised by my agreement. His gaze lingered on me for a moment, and the icy facade seemed to crack just a little. He got out of the car and came around, opening my door, his hand resting lightly on my back as he guided me towards the small breakfast shop across the street. Felt almost natural. Suddenly, I thought I understood his earlier coolness. Leaving immediately after sleeping together might have implied dissatisfaction on my part. His male pride must have been slightly wounded. "Ah, Julian, is this your girlfriend? She's very pretty." The cheerful middle-aged woman running the breakfast shop beamed at us as we walked in. "Yes, she is. Thanks, Auntie," Julian replied smoothly, a small genuine smile softening his features. My heart gave a ridiculous leap at his casual confirmation, even though I knew it likely meant nothing. I managed to keep my expression neutral. Once we were seated at a small table, I couldn't resist probing. "Why did you tell her that?" Julian paused in the act of wiping down the table, raising an eyebrow at me. "What else should I have said? That we just spent the night together." "Right." My expectations were entirely misplaced. Julian remained silent all the way back to my dorm building entrance. As I turned to leave feeling utterly deflated, I acted on impulse, my hand darting out to grab his sleeve. It was pathetic, I knew. Can I get your..." "Speak properly." Julian's eyes dropped to my fidgeting fingers, a hint of amusement softening the corners of his eyes, the previous coolness vanishing completely. "Can I get your contact info?" I blurted out. I expected this to be simple. Standard procedure almost. Instead, Julian's jaw tightened slightly. His eyes narrowed. "No," he said, biting off the word. And then he just turned and walked away. Left me standing there, stunned, a mixture of humiliation and frustration churning inside me. I watched his retreating back, wanting to burn a hole through it with my stare. That feeling of bewildered rejection lingered all the way through the afternoon lecture on data structures. I was slumped in my seat trying to focus when the chair beside me creaked. A clean, cool fragrance drifted over, sandalwood and something crisp, unmistakably Julian. Startled, I looked up, my eyes widening in disbelief. Sure enough, there he was leaning back lazily, one earbud in, scrolling through his phone as if dropping into a random upper-level computer science lecture was the most normal thing in the world. "What are you doing here?" I whispered, leaning closer. Without looking up from his phone, he angled it towards me, displaying his WeChat QR code. "Scan it." Didn't he just refuse me this morning? The inconsistency was maddening. "Men," I thought irritably. But I was already learning to navigate Julian's moods. Wisely, I kept silent, pulling out my own phone and dutifully adding him as a contact. "Did you block my Moments feed?" he asked suddenly, glancing over. "No. I just don't post anything." "You?" "Yes, the young man with the headphones." The professor's voice cut through the lecture hall, his finger pointing directly at Julian. "Would you care to answer this question?" Julian glanced at me, a wry look on his face, before removing his earbud. "Professor, I'm actually a physics major. This isn't my course." The professor blinked, momentarily thrown. "Ah. Well then, perhaps your girlfriend can answer." His gaze swiveled to me. My face instantly flamed as I felt 200 pairs of eyes turn my way. Mortified, I scrambled to my feet and somehow managed to stammer out the correct answer, keenly aware of the whispers and knowing looks rippling through the tiered classroom. Great. Now the entire class thought Julian was my boyfriend. It wasn't entirely my fault, though. Why else would he ditch his own classes to sit through data structures with a friend? Did he do this for all the girls he slept with? The thought sent a fresh wave of irritation through me. Just then, Julian's other earbud slipped out and rolled under the seats towards me. Instinctively, I bent down low to retrieve it. As I did, his hand landed lightly on the sliver of bare skin exposed above the waistband of my jeans. The unexpected touch sent a jolt through me, making me jerk upright abruptly, banging my head hard against the underside of the desk. Tears sprang to my eyes from the sharp pain. Rubbing my forehead, I thrust the earbud back at him, muttering under my breath, "Are you crazy? Flirting like that here now?" Julian met my glare, his own eyes gleaming with amusement. His cool, slender fingers reached out, gently touching the rapidly forming bump on my forehead. I flinched, but he began to rub the spot softly. "Your waist is too thin," he murmured, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "Just wanted to cover you up a bit." Heat rushed back into my face. How could he say something like that with such a deadpan expression? Such a cool demeanor. My obvious blush seemed to delight him. His eyes crinkled at the corners. "Why are you blushing?" he teased, a slow smile spreading across his lips. "What were you thinking?" "Shut up. I wasn't thinking anything." "Oh? Such a quick denial. Weren't you satisfied last night?" My heart felt like it was going to hammer its way out of my chest. Before I could sputter out another denial, the bell rang, signaling the end of the lecture. I snatched my bag, ignoring his hand, and started pushing my way out of the crowded classroom. As we navigated the throng of students, he leaned close to my ear again, his voice a low, intimate whisper. "Me neither." "Me neither what?" "Not satisfied." It took a second for the meaning to register. I stopped, looking up at him, momentarily stunned, the embarrassment clear on my face. His hand came up, gently covering my eyes again. His voice was laced with laughter. "I'll pick you up tonight." Long after we parted ways outside the lecture building, my mind was still reeling. My emotions were a tangled mess, sweetness warring with a sour uncertainty. I knew this relationship, whatever it was, wasn't normal, wasn't healthy. Yet I found myself craving it, addicted to these confusing flashes of tenderness that felt so much like real affection. Back in the dorm, my roommate Chloe immediately pounced, shoving her phone in my face. "Stella, you and Julian are together? Seriously? The campus gossip forum is exploding. Dozens of comments already. You're famous." I glanced down at the screen. Someone had snapped a picture of us during the lecture. The comments section was a predictable mix. Julian's 108th rumored girlfriend? Stella sang from Comp Sci? Wow, how did I not know about her? How could I explain the messy reality of my situation with Julian? Admitting we were together felt like a lie. "No, not yet," I mumbled evasively. "I'm working on it." Chloe clapped me encouragingly on the shoulder. "He came to your lecture. What more working on it do you need?" I spent the rest of the afternoon lying listlessly on my bed, my thoughts a battlefield of conflicting desires and doubts. The internal war raged until my phone pinged with a message from Julian. "Come down." Instantly, all my carefully constructed resolve crumbled. I scrambled out of bed, the previous hours of agonizing seeming utterly ridiculous. Who was I kidding? I wasn't agonizing, I was anticipating. Perhaps because of that strange internal conflict, I remained stubbornly silent during the drive. Julian wasn't exactly talkative either, so the atmosphere in the car grew tense, almost cold. It wasn't until we parked that I realized we weren't at his apartment. We were outside a multiplex cinema. "Oh," I said, forcing my voice to sound casual, fighting the urge to read too much into it. "I thought we were going back to your place." Julian shot me a sideways glance, his expression cool, maybe even a little annoyed. "They have private screening rooms too, you know. The kind with beds." Mortification washed over me. Thank God I hadn't said anything more revealing. As we walked towards the entrance, passing brightly lit concession stands and groups of girls laughing and clutching buckets of popcorn, I couldn't help but steal a glance at them, a pang of something akin to envy hitting me. Oddly, Julian seemed to hesitate for a fraction of a second beside me, his posture stiffening almost imperceptibly before his aura grew even colder. I kept my head down while Julian bought the tickets, feeling too embarrassed to look at him when he returned. He must have sensed my discomfort because he put an arm around my shoulders, pulling me close and gently pressing my head against his chest, blocking my view. The corridor leading to the theaters was quiet, echoing only our footsteps. "Stella," he murmured, his voice laced with amusement. "For someone with such a dirty mind, you have remarkably thin skin." His words sparked my anger, but before I could retort, he pushed me gently through a doorway. I stumbled slightly, only to be caught and pulled back against him. His eyes, dark as a moonless night, seemed to swirl with hidden emotions, impossible to decipher. The proximity made me nervous, softening my voice despite myself. Who has a dirty mind? Certainly not as much as you." My protest died unfinished as Julian's hand covered my eyes again, his lips finding mine. I instinctively tried to push him away, but he captured both my wrists in one hand, pinning them easily against the wall. His lips moved away just slightly, his other hand settling on my waist, lifting me slightly. "Too skinny," he murmured against my mouth. I wriggled uncomfortably against his hold. Being pinned wasn't pleasant. My movement drew his gaze downward along my shoulder. A slow smile spread across his face. "No, wait," he corrected himself softly, his eyes glinting. "You just know where to grow." I had absolutely no idea how to respond to that. Julian didn't seem to require an answer, simply pulling me tighter against him. "Aren't we going to watch the movie?" I asked, slightly breathless. "What's so good about the movie?" he countered, lifting the hem of his shirt slightly, revealing a sliver of smooth, pale skin that made me swallow hard. He noticed my reaction immediately, his eyebrow arching in amusement as he leaned down again. By the time we left the theater complex, the sky was pitch black. Sitting in the car, idly scrolling through my phone, I sensed a sudden chill emanating from Julian beside me. I looked over. His usually impassive face was tight with unmistakable anger. "What's wrong?" I asked, sitting up straighter, a knot of worry forming in my stomach. Julian locked his phone screen and glanced at me, his voice carefully neutral. "Nothing. Let's get something to eat." His closed-off expression told me prying wouldn't work. And really, who was I to him? Why should he confide in me? I tried to accept my place, to manage my expectations, but the rejection still stung. It felt dismissive, cold. "Use you and lose you," I thought bitterly. Typical jerk. Lost in my own resentment, I barely spoke during dinner. When he dropped me off at the dorm, I was ready to bolt, but he caught my wrist, stopping me. His eyes searched mine in the dim light, his mouth set in a flat line. "Were you unhappy today?" "What?" I stared at him, momentarily speechless. Before I could voice my confusion, he released my wrist abruptly. "Forget it. Go on up." The overhead lamp cast long shadows, making him look strangely solitary, almost lonely. A sudden thought occurred to me. Maybe my quietness, my perceived unhappiness after our time together, made him doubt himself? Maybe his pride was hurt again? Wanting to soothe his ego despite my own lingering hurt, I forced myself to speak, blushing furiously. No, it was good. I was satisfied. His reaction wasn't what I expected. Instead of relief, a short, humorless laugh escaped him. He shot me one last, unreadable look before turning and walking away. As I climbed the stairs to my room, I kept replaying that final glance. It felt almost accusatory, as if he were saying, "So that's all I am to you? Just a means to an end." Like he felt used. A flicker of something akin to resentment? From him? My heart hammered against my ribs. A confusing mix of shyness and exhilaration flooded me. I clenched my fists, trying to hold on to reason. Don't be delusional, Stella. Don't fall for it. This is Julian. But my treacherous heart whispered a different story. Maybe he actually likes me. When I pushed open the dorm room door, Chloe greeted me with an ecstatic grin. Stella, you liar. You told me you were working on it. You and Julian are totally together. What are you talking about? I stared at her, completely lost. Chloe rolled her eyes dramatically. The gossip forum. This afternoon. Someone, probably that jealous cow Vanessa from the council office, posted some nasty stuff about you. And Julian himself went on there and shut her down. It was epic. Didn't you see it? Shaking my head, trying to suppress the wild fluttering in my chest, I fumbled for my phone and pulled up the forum. Sure enough, buried in the comments under the photo from the lecture, was a venomous post by Vanessa. Girlfriend? Please. Everyone saw Julian take Stella away from the KTV party that night. More like a one-night stand, the free kind. Reading it sent a cold wave of humiliation through me. The familiar sourness rising. Because she wasn't entirely wrong, was she? I had no grounds to refute the core implication. But just a few comments below Vanessa's post was Julian's reply. Several replies, actually. If she wasn't my girlfriend, why would I attend her class? Do I look like I have that much free time? Correction. I didn't take her anywhere. She took me. I was too drunk to function. Only recognize my girlfriend. Even if you offered yourself for free, nobody would want you. Understand? Low class and low IQ are contagious. Oh, my God. He was amazing. So that was why he was angry in the car earlier? Because of this post? I need to make a call, I told Chloe, unable to stop the smile spreading across my face, mirroring her own delighted expression. I practically ran out onto the small balcony, my fingers trembling slightly as I dialed Julian's number. It rang a few times before he answered, his voice cool and collected as always. What's up? Hearing his voice so calm, somehow doused the frantic excitement bubbling inside me. I took a deep breath, regaining my composure. It was foolish to keep imagining things, to let my hopes run wild. Don't be greedy, Stella. He was just defending my reputation, maybe his own too. Any decent guy would do the same, wouldn't they? Knowing the truth of our situation, how could I have let myself get carried away? Nothing really, I said, keeping my tone light. Just wondering if you got back okay. Yeah, just got upstairs. And thanks for the stuff on the forum. There was a distinct pause on the other end. I heard him take a slightly deeper breath before replying, his voice sounding a little strained. It was nothing. After we hung up, I stood on the balcony for a long time, letting the cool night breeze wash over my face. Somehow I felt a little better, more grounded. Sleep didn't come easily that night. I tossed and turned, finally drifting into a restless dream where Julian stood before me, hands shoved in his pockets, headphones on, chin tilted defiantly. Let's just end this, he said, his voice flat, cold. In the dream, stripped of all shame, I pleaded with him, clung to him, but he just turned and walked away, leaving me reaching for his disappearing back. I woke up gasping, my pillow damp with sweat. Glancing at my phone, I saw it was 7 a.m. Time to get up anyway. As I finished dressing, a notification popped up from Julian. Morning class today? My heart did a strange little flip. The gentle query was such a stark contrast to my nightmare. Hesitantly, I typed back. Yes. Okay. Come down when you're ready. Brought you breakfast. I stood there, frozen for a moment, rereading his message. Then on impulse, I tiptoed out to the balcony and peered down. There he was, sitting on the low flowerbed wall below my dorm, bathed in the soft morning sunlight that made his pale skin seem almost translucent. Girls walking past inevitably turned their heads for a second look, drawn to his effortless cool. But he seemed oblivious, eyes downcast, focused entirely on his phone. As I quickly applied some makeup, a thought struck me. Julian didn't actually know my class schedule. He brought breakfast and waited. Regardless of whether I had class or not. What if I had said no? Would I have missed this quiet gesture? This unexpected softness? Did he realize how dangerous this was? Being this nice to a friend? Didn't he know it risked reigniting the very greed, the very hope I was trying so desperately to suppress? When I finally went downstairs and approached him, he looked up at the exact same moment, his gaze meeting mine. For a split second, I could have sworn his expression was genuinely tender, and my heart stumbled over itself. Julian slipped his phone into his pocket, handed me the bag of warm breakfast pastries, and then casually took my heavy textbook bag from my shoulder, falling into step beside me. "Don't you have class?" I asked, taking a bite of a savory bun. He reached over naturally, took the carton of soy milk from my hand, twisted the cap off and held it to my lips. "No class today. Heading to the lab later." I took a sip, leaning slightly towards his hand. Usually I ordered my milk tea loaded with sugar. I had a serious sweet tooth. But somehow this plain unsweetened soy milk from the campus cafeteria tasted incredibly sweet today. "What time do you finish?" he asked as we reached the entrance of my lecture building, handing my bag back. 11. He gave a slight nod, a flick of his chin. "I'll meet you here." And then he turned and walked away quickly, almost as if he were eager to escape, not even giving me a chance to reply. Not that I would have refused. Sitting in class, I found myself doodling distractedly in my notebook. Glancing down, I realized I'd unconsciously filled half a page with his name. Julian, Julian, Julian. Mortified, I started to tear the page out, but Chloe leaned over, sighing dramatically. "Ah, young love. So sweet it gives me cavities." It was useless denying it, wasn't it? No matter how many times I told Chloe we weren't really boyfriend and girlfriend, she wouldn't believe it, not after everything. Maybe I should just try to make the lie a reality? He kept blurring the lines, pushing the boundaries. Why couldn't I be greedy too? "Chloe," I asked, turning to her, voicing the insecurity that had been gnawing at me. Do you think Julian was like this with his other girlfriends? All the rumored ones." Chloe's perfectly drawn eyebrows shot up. "What other girlfriends?" "Stella, honey, it's debatable if he's ever had a real girlfriend before you. They were all just rumors, whispers." So the title of girlfriend was actually a rare honor in Julian's world? After class, the wide concrete path outside the building was teeming with students. Across the way, leaning against the trunk of a large plane tree, stood Julian. Even in the crowd, he was instantly recognizable, sunlight filtering through the leaves dappling his face, creating an intriguing play of light and shadow. He looked up, his eyes locking with mine across the distance. Just then a girl with flushed cheeks approached him hesitantly. Their figures stood close together, their shadows merging on the pavement, looking disconcertingly harmonious. A tight, uncomfortable knot formed in my stomach, jealousy, sharp and unwelcome, before I could even fully process it. But then Julian gestured towards me, his eyes still fixed on mine, his expression softening as he looked at me, even as he politely but firmly dismissed the other girl. He navigated the crowd and stopped in front of me, looking down with a challenging glint in his eye. "Nothing you want to say?" "About what?" I retorted, still prickly from the jealousy. "That you shouldn't use me as your shield?" His eyes narrowed slightly, a dangerous edge creeping into his voice. "Funny," he said softly. "You didn't seem to mind so much when you were the one using me." His words hit their mark. Feeling flustered, I resorted to a tactic my friend Maya swore by: the push and pull. I reached out, tugging lightly on his sleeve, forcing a placating tone. Okay, I was wrong. Let's go get lunch." It was like watching a balloon deflate. The tension suddenly drained out of him, leaving him looking almost bewildered for a second. Maya, my effortlessly popular friend, always said, "Men need to be angled for, Stella, not chased." "What does angling mean?" I'd asked. "Keep them off balance," she'd explained. "Make them a little unhappy, then immediately soothe them. Play with their emotions. After a while they're hooked." I'd always thought the advice was brilliant, but I'd never dared try such tactics on Julian. He seemed too volatile, too untouchable. But now he was giving me openings, showing cracks in his cool facade, making me believe I could reel him in, that this captivating blend of ice and fire could actually be mine. Julian recovered quickly, a slow smile curving his lips. He took my hand, his thumb brushing over my knuckles, his touch sending sparks up my arm. "What exactly were you wrong about?" he asked, his tone laced with a playful arrogance. Pushing his luck, was he? "I don't know," I mumbled, deciding faux submission was the best strategy. This angling business was harder than it looked. "I'll just admit I was wrong first. You can teach me how to fix it later." A soft laugh escaped him, warm and intimate, sending shivers down my spine. "All right," he agreed easily. At the cafeteria, Julian brought our food to the table after the number was called. Along with the main dishes, There was a small saucer of black vinegar. How did you know I like vinegar with my dumplings? I asked, surprised. He shrugged, setting down the tray and handing me chopsticks. Did I? I like it too. I don't have class this afternoon, I said, quickly changing the subject to avoid dwelling on the possibility of it being another coincidence, another instance of me reading too much into things. Want to go to Happy Valley? Okay, he replied, the simple word somehow sounding incredibly tender when he said it. Since it was a Wednesday, the amusement park wasn't crowded. We walked right onto most rides without any queues. I immediately dragged Julian towards the giant pendulum ride, the one that swings over 180 degrees. He stood at the base, looking up at the massive swinging arm, his face paling slightly. His lips pressed into a thin line. After a moment he asked, his voice carefully neutral, "You're not scared?" Seeing that hint of apprehension on his usually unflappable face made me grin. Nope. I love that stomach-dropping feeling. Are you scared? We don't have to ride it if you are. It's fine, he insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. Strapped into the seat beside him, I glanced over excitedly as the ride started its ascent. He hadn't said another word. A mischievous part of me wanted to see him lose his cool just once. Maybe I could offer him a comforting hug afterwards? But Julian remained stubbornly Julian. His eyes were narrowed slightly against the wind, but he never closed them, never made a sound. Apart from the distinct lack of color in his lips, he showed no outward signs of fear or distress. When the ride finally slowed to a stop, I hopped off, feeling slightly disappointed by his composure, ready to grab my bag from the locker. But Julian grabbed my arm, leaning heavily against me, effectively turning me into a human crutch. Dizzy, he muttered, pressing his forehead against my shoulder. Help me out. Instinctively, my arm went around his waist to support him. It wasn't the first time I'd held him like this, but the previous time had been a hazy, alcohol-fueled blur. Now, fully sober, I was acutely aware of the reality of his body beneath my hand, the lean muscle, the surprising strength beneath the slim frame. His waist was firm, defined. I had a thing for waists, a serious weakness, and the contact sent an unexpected jolt of possessiveness through me. Julian seemed hyper-aware of the subtle shift in my hold. He turned his head, looking down at me, his eyes dark and intense. He was clearly terrified of heights, yet he'd come to an amusement park with me anyway. After that one ride, Julian became my oversized human backpack, clinging to me as we walked through the park. He seemed completely unbothered by the curious glances we attracted. Emerging from the log flume ride, Julian shook the water droplets from his dark hair. The dampness made him look simultaneously vulnerable and incredibly alluring. He seemed more himself now, though more energized. Probably because I hadn't subjected him to any more stomach-lurching rides. The rest of our time had been decidedly tame. Let's go to Disneyland next time, he suggested casually, tossing his disposable poncho into a bin. No way, Disneyland is boring. Do you have to go on thrill rides? He demanded, his tone sharpening, a hint of exasperation creeping in. He looked almost annoyed. I blinked innocently. What else is there to do at an amusement park? Sunbathe? He narrowed his eyes, water droplets clinging to his long lashes, making them sparkle. He definitely looked annoyed now. Time for another dose of Maya's wisdom. The old tricks were the best. I stepped closer, linking my arm through his. I was just teasing, I said, leaning my head against his shoulder. Disneyland sounds great. Anywhere you want to go, I'll go with you. A faint pink tinge appeared on the tips of his ears. A rare sight. Unconsciously, I deployed the angling technique again. And apparently it had worked. Quite effectively, in fact. The car didn't stop at the university gates. It pulled up in front of his apartment building again. I want to go home, Julian said, leaning down to look at me as I hesitated in the passenger seat. You said you'd come with me. His expression was a blatant threat, but his voice held a note of surprising vulnerability, almost pleading. I seriously suspected he might have multiple personalities. Eating together, studying together, going out on dates, sleeping together. Provoking him occasionally, then immediately soothing him. Julian's reactions, his possessiveness, his moments of unexpected tenderness. Everything made me believe he liked me. Liked me a lot. It made me forget the precarious foundation of our relationship, that we weren't actually a proper couple. Until one night at his place. Afterwards, I felt completely drained, like all the moisture had been wrung out of me. I tried to disentangle myself from his embrace to get some water. Julian put down his phone, gently pinching my cheek. His touch was impossibly fond. Lie still. I'll get it for you. Watching the smooth, pale expanse of his back as he walked out of the room, my heart clenched with a fierce surge of affection. I really liked him. I burrowed back under the covers, intending to close my eyes for just a moment while I waited. But my gaze snagged on his phone, left unlocked on the nightstand. The screen showed his WeChat interface. It wasn't the account he used to contact me. I knew it instantly. I'd messaged him around 6 p.m. after my last class, and that chat history wasn't visible here. This was a different account. My hand hovered over the phone, wanting to snatch it up, investigate. But fear held me back. Fear of him walking back in, catching me, shattering the fragile peace between us. I squeezed my eyes shut, pretending I hadn't seen anything. But it was useless. My mind raced, filled with the sickening anxiety of discovery, overlaid with a dull, throbbing ache in my chest. It felt like being smothered, unable to breathe properly. Why would he need 2 WeChat accounts? The possible reasons were depressingly obvious, weren't they? A bitter taste flooded my mouth. Just then, Julian returned with a glass of water. He stood beside the bed, a hint of amusement in his voice. Still not taking it? Want me to feed it to you? If I hadn't seen the phone screen, I probably would have played along, pouted, demanded he feed me. Now the thought felt repulsive. Propping myself up on my elbows, I silently took the glass and sipped the water slowly, trying to wash away the dryness, the bitterness in my throat. Julian was incredibly perceptive. He noticed the shift in my mood immediately. Taking the empty glass, he set it aside and gently stroked my hair. Too tired? He asked softly, his voice full of concern. I lowered my eyes, nodding mutely. Okay, get some rest. I'll try to be more restrained next time. The tips of his ears turned pink again. A flash of endearing shyness that seemed so out of place on him it made me stare. He leaned closer, clearly intending to kiss me. Without thinking, I turned my head away. The atmosphere froze instantly. Julian's natural coolness intensified, hardening into something sharp and dangerous. What's wrong with you? He asked, his voice clipped, devoid of its earlier warmth. I didn't want a confrontation, didn't want to make things ugly. He'd never promised me anything, never spoken of love or exclusivity. I didn't even have the right to question him. So I retreated, forcing softness back into my voice. I'm just tired, that's all. Why are you getting angry? I want to sleep. In any relationship, if one person backs down, conflict can usually be deferred. It worked now. Hearing my placating tone, Julian's expression relaxed slightly, the hard lines softening. Okay, he murmured. Sleep then. But sleep wouldn't come. Exhausted as I was, lying there in the dark, held tightly in Julian's arms, my mind raced. How could I sleep? The illusion had shattered. The night felt long and suffocating. A time for licking wounds and facing reality. I had to accept it. I wasn't the one who could hold on to Julian. He was just momentarily interested. That's all it ever was. The next morning, I maintained a fragile calm until we reached the science building entrance where we usually parted ways. As I turned to leave, he caught my wrist again. His lips were pressed into a thin, flat line, clearly still sensing my withdrawal, unhappy about it. What time do you finish class? I think I'll just go back to the dorm after class and sleep, I said, avoiding his eyes. Don't wait for me. A long, heavy silence stretched between us. Finally, Julian's jaw tightened, his tongue pressing against the inside of his cheek. Fine, he bit out, the single word stripped of all warmth. I gently pulled my hand free and walked away without looking back. It was surprisingly easy, I realized, deciding to leave someone who had never truly made me feel secure. Maybe there was also a layer of unspoken humiliation, a feeling of betrayal, even though technically he hadn't broken any promises. We never demanded loyalty from each other. I couldn't blame him. Based on the tense atmosphere of our parting, I assumed Julian, being as perceptive as he was, understood that we had reached a silent agreement. It was over. So I was completely blindsided when later that day, after waking up from a long nap, I received another message from him. Morning class today? The same question. But seeing it again ignited a spark of irritation, frustration, even anger. He comes here every day. Doesn't he know my schedule? By now, he was clearly managing his time, juggling contacts on different accounts, yet he still pursued me like this? Why? What right did he have? Despite the anger, a familiar compulsion drew me to the balcony. Peeked down. He was there. Same spot, same posture, even wearing the same damn jacket. My fingers tightened on my phone. No class today. Too tired. Going back to sleep. I typed the message with unnecessary force, almost wanting to crack the screen. Julian stared down at his phone for a long time. So long I started to think he might just sit there indefinitely. Then finally he stood up and walked away. It was exactly the outcome I'd supposedly wanted. So why did I feel so unsatisfied? Stella, you're going to be late. What are you staring at? Isn't Julian waiting downstairs? Chloe's voice jolted me back to reality as she grabbed her bag. I quickly wiped away a tear I hadn't even realized had fallen. I'm not going today, I mumbled, keeping my head down. Can you sign me in? I don't feel well. Are you okay? Should I take you to the clinic? Chloe stepped closer, concerned. Afraid she'd see my red-rimmed eyes, I ducked my head lower, clutching my stomach dramatically. No, it's fine. Probably just something I ate. Stomach bug. I'll take some medicine and sleep it off. Chloe hesitated but eventually nodded. Okay, well, call me if you need anything. I murmured, avoiding her gaze as I climbed back into bed. Only when the dorm room door clicked shut, leaving me alone in the sudden quiet, did I finally let go. I buried my face in my pillow and sobbed, muffling the sounds, crying until exhaustion finally pulled me back into sleep. Anyone who knew Julian knew how proud he was. Over the next few days, he tried contacting me multiple times, morning, noon, night, invitations for meals, study sessions, just hanging out. Each time I forced myself to reject him, my replies growing colder, more detached. Eventually the messages stopped. Honestly, I was surprised he persisted for even a few days. I expected an immediate clean break. What surprised me more was how agonizing each rejection felt. How much it hurt to push him away. Liking someone, you really couldn't just switch it off. News of our apparent breakup spread quickly across campus. People knew we'd been practically joined at the hip, thanks to Julian's unexpectedly public displays of attention. Now whispers followed me everywhere. If only it were a real breakup. That would be simpler. Excuse me, senior? A polite voice interrupted my thoughts as I walked home from a late class. A boy with clear eyes and a shy smile blocked my path. He was cute in a clean-cut, innocent way completely different from Julian. Could I get your WeChat? He asked, his cheeks flushing pink. A wave of déjà vu washed over me. Had Julian experienced this too? Girls approaching him constantly? My mind flashed back to my freshman year. For a few confusing days, I'd been inundated with friend requests from strangers. First, I didn't understand why. Eventually, I developed a standard reply for any unfamiliar contact without a clear note. Sorry, I already like someone very much. Thanks. Then block. Back then, the person I liked was Mark. But long distance and unspoken feelings had eroded the crush, and seeing his official relationship announcement on social media had led to one night of tears, 2 weeks of melancholy, a flurry of embarrassingly emo posts, and then acceptance. I moved on. Falling for Julian, however, that was different. The ache of letting him go felt infinitely sharper, more persistent than the sadness over Mark ever had. I'm sorry, I said, pulling myself back to the present, offering the boy my practiced, gentle rejection. I already like someone very much. I nodded politely and started to walk past him. That's when I saw him. Julian. Standing under a lone streetlight further down the path. Why was he here? He'd been silent for almost 2 weeks. The streetlight cast a harsh white glow from above, pooling a dark shadow at his feet. He looked different, colder, somehow darker. An unsettling stillness about him radiated a tightly controlled tension. He was watching me, his face expressionless, yet I could sense a simmering intensity beneath the surface, something bordering on desperate. It was deeply unnerving. Feigning composure I didn't feel, I continued walking, intending to pass him without acknowledgement. But as I drew level, his hand shot out, grabbing my arm, pulling me to a halt. His grip was tight, his knuckles white. He was using considerable force, as if physically restraining himself from doing more. Like someone very much, he repeated, his voice dangerously soft, almost fragile. But his eyes, narrowed and shadowed, looked fiercely intense. Before I could form a response, he released my arm abruptly. His next words were quiet, laced with something that sounded unnervingly like pleading. Can you stop liking him? His vulnerability disarmed me. Suddenly the anger, the resentment felt less important. Can you stop pretending you like me? I countered, the question sharper than I intended. Julian frowned, his brow furrowing. What do you mean, pretending? The flicker of hurt in his eyes seemed to insist. But I do like you. The second WeChat account, Julian. The one you used to add me. You're a master of time management, aren't you? Why keep up the act? Do you really want me to spell it out, make things awkward? For both of us. The words tumbled out in a rush, fueled by weeks of suppressed hurt and confusion. As soon as they were out, I held my breath, half hoping, half dreading his explanation. His lips thinned into a tight line. He seemed to be battling some internal conflict. The silence stretched, making me regret my outburst. Just as I was about to backtrack, he spoke, his voice low and tight. Then maybe you should unblock my other account. Unblock his other account? When had I ever blocked him? Then it hit me. Freshman year. All those random friend requests. He must have been one of them. Back when I was still hung up on Mark. I blocked him without a second thought. The realization left me momentarily speechless. This whole misunderstanding stemmed from something that happened years ago? Julian reached out, his index finger gently tapping my forehead. So this whole drama was because of that? There was a hint of accusation in his tone now, as if I were the one who had been unreasonable. So, you've had a crush on me all this time? I deflected, trying to regain my footing, my eyes wide with astonishment. I expected a confirmation, maybe a shy admission. Instead, Julian straightened up, took my hand and started walking slowly towards my dorm, remaining silent. Only when we reached the entrance did he finally speak, his voice quiet, almost reflective. Maybe even longer than I realized myself. He told me then about a math competition training camp in Suzhou several years ago. I'd arrived late on the first day, finding the only empty seat next to him. I hadn't recognized anyone except a classmate sitting in front of me, so I kept my head down, focused on the problems. He remembered watching me, impressed as I finished a page of advanced math problems in just 13 minutes. He overheard me borrowing a textbook from the girl in front, realizing it was my first exposure to Olympiad-level math. He'd felt a flicker of admiration. The next day, I sat diagonally in front of him. During a tough geometry lecture, another girl broke down crying in frustration. My younger self, arrogant and tactless, had muttered loud enough for him to hear. If you suck, practice more. He'd laughed then. But on the third day, and for the rest of the camp, I wasn't there. He'd asked around, eventually learning that I'd left abruptly, gone home overnight, devastated after being rejected by the boy I liked. Julian admitted he hadn't understood the strange pang of disappointment he felt back then. He told himself it was annoyance at my giving up, regret, overwasted potential. Only now, seeing me again at university, did he finally understand. It hadn't been annoyance. It had been jealousy, sourness. Listening to him recount the story, his eyes distant with memory, I felt a wave of stunned disbelief, followed by a strange, poignant ache. I'd been so fixated on Mark back then, I hadn't even noticed the incredibly handsome boy sitting right beside me. Impulsively, I stepped closer, taking his hand again, carefully weaving my fingers through his. So, Julian repeated softly, his gaze fixed on our joined hands, his voice barely a whisper. Stop liking him? Please. I shook my head, about to clarify that Mark was ancient history, but Julian misinterpreted the gesture. He stiffened, his face paling, and started to pull his hand away, ready to leave again. I stopped liking him ages ago. I tightened my grip, refusing to let this stubborn, quick-to-jump-to-conclusions man go. The person I like very much, the one I mentioned tonight, it's you, Julian. He froze. I pressed on, needing him to understand. Why else do you think I went home with you from the KTV that night? I expected realization, relief. Instead, his lips quirked. Because you're obsessed with appearances. Obsessed with? You have got to be kidding me. Infuriated, I dropped his hand. Who was he calling shallow? After chasing me relentlessly, refusing to take no for an answer? You said it yourself. In your moments feed. He added quickly, seeing my expression. How could I have? Then, a mortifying memory surfaced. The dark period after Mark's relationship announcement. The cringeworthy posts I'd made. Screenshots of chats with Maya where I declared my next conquest. Needed to be passionate, unlike the reserved Mark. Photos from a drunken night out commiserating with Chloe. Even that embarrassing boyfriend application post listing ridiculous requirements. But I blocked you, didn't I? So all his supposed experience, his smooth moves, were they based on my idiotic, heartbroken ramblings? A flicker of something akin to embarrassment crossed Julian's face. I had someone screenshot them for me. I couldn't help it. Laughter bubbled up, uncontrollable, mixed with the sweet relief flooding my system. Julian, flustered and annoyed by my amusement, pulled me close, effectively silencing my laughter with a kiss that was both punishing and possessive, a clear staking of his claim. Reconciling after a 2-week breakup apparently caused quite a stir. Despite being objectively quite attractive myself, I overheard whispers accusing me of being pathetic, of begging Julian to take me back. Why? Just because he was the cool, quiet one, the one who looked like he wouldn't stoop to chasing someone? Once you feel secure in a relationship, a little playful testing is inevitable. Annoyed by the unfair gossip, I decided to blame Julian, giving him the silent treatment, making him work for my forgiveness. I didn't expect him to respond quite so publicly. The next day at noon, amidst the bustling crowd of students heading to lunch, I saw him standing under the trees lining the main campus road, holding a huge bouquet of flowers. He met my eyes across the distance and called out my name, loud enough for everyone around to hear. "Stella, can you please look at me?" My defenses crumbled instantly. Mortified but secretly thrilled, I rushed over, grabbed his arm, and practically dragged him away from the stairs and whispers. He was pale, yes, but not from embarrassment. Not even the tips of his ears were red. He genuinely didn't care about making a scene. Shameless. Once we reached a quieter spot, I snatched the flowers from him, catching my breath. "Who told you to do that?" "I was just testing you a little." Julian reached out, gently tucking a stray strand of hair behind my ear, his thumb brushing my earlobe. "You weren't testing," he said softly. His eyes, a lighter shade in the sunlight, seemed to hold a warmth that threatened to melt me completely. Still flustered, I insisted on taking the flowers back to my dorm before going to lunch. That afternoon he drove us off campus again. When he pulled up outside the familiar cinema complex, I hesitated. "Do you really have the nerve to call me the one with the—" Before I could finish the sentence, Julian leaned over, clapping a hand gently over my mouth, his eyes crinkling with laughter. He got out, came around to open my door, pulling me out with an apologetic glance towards the bemused taxi driver. Only then did I fully register how childish I must have sounded. Julian released my mouth, his smile widening. "We're here to watch a movie, Stella. What were you thinking? Still got that dirty mind?" I couldn't win against him. This time it felt different. Like those girls I'd envied before, I walked into the theater holding a bucket of popcorn and a large soda, my hand held firmly in Julian's. He'd bought tickets for the back row couple seats. I noticed our row was empty, which seemed odd for a popular film. But then I glanced down at the main seating area. It was nearly full. I understood then. Privacy. But with so many people potentially watching, maybe just kissing was the limit? Restless, I barely registered the first half of the movie, my attention drifting constantly to Julian beside me. He seemed completely absorbed in the screen, his expression focused, almost scholarly. "What's wrong?" he finally murmured, turning his head slightly towards me. I shook my head quickly. What could I say? We paid extra for these seats, shouldn't we make use of them? He must have read my thoughts, because a low chuckle escaped him, soft and intimate in the darkness. "Want me to kiss you?" Heat flooded my face again. Mortified, I wanted to scratch his eyes out. Before I could sputter a denial, he leaned in, his arm snaking around my waist, pulling me effortlessly into his lap. The kiss was fierce, demanding, leaving me breathless. His hand rested coolly against the small of my back. When he finally pulled away, our foreheads rested together. A faint smile played on his lips, softening his features. "I have something for you," he whispered, his arms tightening around my waist. "What is it?" I tilted my head up, my nose brushing against his. "In my pocket." Blushing, I reached into his jacket pocket, my fingers closing around a small piece of cardstock. I pulled it out. It was a movie ticket stub, dated the same day we'd gone to that private cinema room. A tremor went through me. I looked up at him, whispering his name, my voice thick with emotion. Julian. So, I wasn't the only one who had been walking on eggshells, testing the waters. He'd been just as insecure, just as uncertain as I was. Yet, he was the one who had swallowed his pride that night under the streetlight, asking me, begging me not to like someone else. Overwhelmed by a wave of tenderness, I wrapped my arms around his neck and pulled him down for another kiss. As his lips responded eagerly, I realized dimly that this was the first time I had initiated. Are you going to frame this ticket stub now? Julian murmured against my neck, his warm breath making me shiver. Suddenly, the ticket stub in my hand felt incredibly precious, almost sacred. Embarrassed by the thought, I gave his lean waist a playful pinch. Ow! Serves you right, I retorted, trying to sound nonchalant despite the warmth spreading through me. You're probably the one who wants to frame it, keeping it for this long. He hummed non-committally against my skin, the sound low and dangerously sexy, tinged with something unreadable. A sweet, tingling happiness spread through me, chasing away the last lingering shadows of doubt. Later, standing outside my dorm, I watched Julian walk back towards the campus gate under the distant streetlights. On impulse, I waved. Even though I couldn't see his face clearly from this distance, I somehow knew he was smiling back. In that moment, the last traces of bitterness finally dissolved. Looking back, I realized I hadn't given him my trust, my affection without reservation. All my anxieties, my calculated moves. Maybe they stemmed from my own insecurities. My boy. He deserved better. He deserved someone who loved him wholeheartedly. That sourness I'd felt earlier, it wasn't just jealousy. It was empathy, a pang of regret for not seeing his vulnerability sooner, a desire to make it up to him, to cherish him properly. With that newfound resolve, I woke up early the next morning, my heart light. I bought breakfast from the shop across the street and hurried over to Julian's dormitory building. Standing in the same spot where he usually waited for me, I pulled out my phone and sent him a message, mirroring his usual query. Morning class today? His reply came almost instantly. Nope. What's up? You don't have class either, right? Sleeping in, lazybones. This was not how I had envisioned this going. Foiled at the first step. I looked around at the students already heading out, resigned. It was only just past 7 a.m., the sun already starting to feel warm. I couldn't exactly drag him out of bed just to force breakfast on him. That wouldn't be sweet, it would be annoying. Deflated, I stared down at the bag of rapidly cooling pastries and soy milk. Might as well head back. As I turned to leave, I quickly typed another message. Nothing. Just missed you. Couldn't sleep thinking about you. Stella. Julian's voice, slightly breathless, came from behind me. I spun around. He was leaning over, hands braced on his knees, catching his breath, clearly having run downstairs. A wide smile spread across my face. I hurried towards him, holding out the breakfast bag. How did you know I brought you breakfast? He straightened up, taking the bag, a slow, dazzling smile transforming his face. He tapped his phone against my cheek playfully, his eyebrows raised in mock accusation. Couldn't sleep thinking about me, huh? Couldn't guess. Oh, he was impossible. Before I could retort, he leaned down, capturing my lips in a quick, sweet kiss, light as a butterfly's wings. When he pulled back, his eyes were shining. Stella, he said softly, his voice filled with genuine happiness. This made my day. I can make every day this happy for you, I thought, my heart swelling. My boy.